Yeah, one of those weird things that I remember for God knows what reason.
Grade 12 English? Get the fuck out of here.
Right? Or in my case, it's more like, grade 10 mathematics. Fuck
Grade
off.
10 math? Fuck off. I've got like an extremely vague 90s cartoon to remember.
User wins. Alphanumeric!
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Alphanumeric, the weekly podcast where we review every episode of ReBoot ever in order, starting from the beginning. I'm one of your hosts, Christopher Siege.
I am one of your other hosts, NeoCal.
And
we do not have somebody else.
Yes, no Aiden this week, unfortunately, as he is off on a alphanumeric assignment. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. Unfortunately, he had to work, but he presumably will be here next week. Regardless of that, the show must go on. So this week on Alphanumeric, we are talking about the second episode of ReBoot, which is called Racing the Clock. It originally aired in Canada and the US on September 17th, 1994.
And that's just from his memory. He didn't even look that up.
No, it's not like I have a Wikipedia page open in front of me or anything, because as has been established on other podcasts, I am a legitimate journalism.
That's true.
Cal, why don't you get us started on this episode?
All right. So we start the episode with a zoom in on Dot's diner. Mm-hmm. And we're met with a whole bunch of pop-up windows. And this might be really foreign or weird for younger people, but like, man, that gave me some weird, like, hideous nostalgia when we zoomed into the diner and there's all these like pop-ups.
I know they have a very GeoCities feel to them, don't they?
Yeah, with like they flash on and off. Yeah. They're bright colors on yellow backgrounds. It's cancerous to the eyes, like big giant like fuchsia arrows flashing on yellow backgrounds.
Yeah, very reminiscent of Yahoo GeoCities or like AOL websites.
Yes, the AOL thing. I am guilty of participating in that culture. But anyway, some of them are kind of like they're pointing Enzo's. Some of them kind of like flash and they say Enzo's delivery service. And he's just sitting at a table in the diner with windows open in front of him.
Mm-hmm. And he's all like carefully adjusting them. And you can tell just by looking at him, like he's clearly set up and ready to go for something to happen.
Yeah, they're 3D and they're floating in the air, but he's tilting them and closing one. And he closes one so the camera can see him. And he's got this smug little face on himself. And so you're like, oh, he's doing a startup. Cool. I just noticed that he has 01 on his shirt.
Yeah, he did last episode as well.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just noticed now. And yeah, he gets a call and he's like, no way. And he answers it and there's a binome on the...
There is a Zero binome on there who has some suspiciously Star Trek looking insignia on him, who refers to himself as Jean-Luc.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he...
oh, shit, I need to...
Yeah, he is red and gold colored, and he has 4 pins, just like a captain does in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, and even he doesn't introduce himself, but later when... Oh, that makes sense. Later when Enzo is making up a cover story, he says, some guy named Jean-Luc. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's clearly another Star Trek reference. Doesn't he spin his hat around? He like spins his hat around and it like is met with no resistance and kind of like goes off to the side.
Yeah, it twirls around. It twirls around like a propeller. And then
this kid is so 90s. He's got like the sideways cap. He's got like he permanently wears like skateboarding gear.
Yeah, says alphanumeric, you know.
As we all did.
As we all did in the 90s. I when I was a kid, I actually started using, for a little while, I started using reboot slang in my just regular vocabulary.
That seems like a Christopher thing to do.
Right?
No, you're right. He does the little binom does introduce himself as Jean-Luc, and then he's like, "Oh, sorry, wrong number." He was trying to dial dots.
I like how Enzo has this little. He already has his little answering spiel just completely rehearsed. So every time he answers a call, he answers with the exact same thing. You can tell this is just something that he's been practicing.
Yeah, what is it? Enzo's overwrite delivery service?
Yep.
So I know, yeah. So I realize that this is just a cartoon and stuff, but overwrite delivery service, what would that be like in reality? Like what would Enzo be doing to a computer? Like overwriting like old like defragged data, or I'm thinking about that too much. I just think it's cool.
Burning new songs onto a CD RW
Oh
over
shit.
the old ones.
Man, remember when there were rewritable CDs?
Yeah.
And those kids were like the coolest? And they were...
One thing that was kind of annoying about there were also rewritable DVDs as well, and one thing that was kind of annoying about these discs was player compatibility was hit or miss.
Yeah, it was a weird time.
So like some CD players would play CD RWs, but not all of them would. In fact, like most of them didn't. And it was such a rare, yeah, it was such a rarity that they would usually say on them, like like the like your like little Sony like mini system would say right on it, it would say CD RW compatible.
Yeah, some of them were stamped with that specifically.
Yeah. And it was the same with for a little while there. It was the same with DVD RWs as well. DVD players would usually specify on them whether they were compatible with RWs or not.
What a time to be alive!
Yeah.
What does Jean-Luc say in the window? He's like, "Is this Dot's data compression takeout?"
Yeah.
Data compression takeout. I think it's cool. I don't think they've specifically said that whole the whole name of her business in the first episode, so I thought it was cool.
I wonder if they will say it again, or if it will be one of those things that just gets that is just a throwaway line.
Yeah, it'll probably just be referred to as Dot's Diner.
In fact, I'm sure that is what it is referred to as. But we're pretending like it's 1994, so we're not going ahead.
Yeah, it's a rad business.
Yeah. Dot and Bob show up. Cecil opens the
Cecil.
In a scene that actually made me laugh out loud when I was watching the episode. Cecil opens the door up and holds it open for Dot. Dot walks in. Bob is just about to walk in behind her, and Cecil actually slams the door right on Bob.
Oh, is that what happens?
And then zips away. Yeah. Cecil really doesn't like Bob, apparently.
Oh yeah, he opens the door for... See, this is a weird thing going on because Dot has some interesting camel toe going on in her one-piece suit. But she's walking and her hands are behind her back, and I thought like Bob was restraining her. And
no.
Cecil slams the door on Bob. I'm talking about like when I watched this when I was like a kid. I was like, what is happening there?
She has her hands behind her back, but yeah, I'm looking at it now, and yeah, it kind of looks like she's just handcuffed.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, and I remember watching this episode a few times, I thought like Bob had her in handcuffs, and Cecil like slammed the door on Bob so she could go free.
Oh,
it reminds me of like deviant art like pictures where like nobody can draw hands, and they just draw.
Yeah.
And they just put the characters' arms behind them.
I thought you were going somewhere completely different with that.
No.
You know, Bob's got Dot all handcuffed, and it reminds me of some old deviant art pages. It's like, Okay.
I don't tease myself with DeviantArt. I go straight to Rule 34. Come now.
That is also going back.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cecil slams the door on Bob.
He gives Cecil a hate glare.
Yeah, and Cecil zips away, following Dot. Dot walks over to greet Enzo and asks him basically, "Oh, how's your business going?"
Yeah, and this is funny. I had to go back and double check this. He starts just like exaggerating how great his business is or whatever, and he moves a window, and it has this bar graph.
Yep.
Like going up, and it reminds me of the Stonks meme.
Which one is that again?
It's the one with like the basic like weird like mannequin head that's used in a lot of different like memes, but he's wearing a suit, and in the background there's like stock market like gibberish and an arrow like graph going upwards, and it says Stonks.
Huh.
Anyways, yeah, Enzo with his hands up. Enzo with his hands up with like the bar graph in the background. I'll send you a screenshot. Reminds me of the Stonks meme.
So I've got the subtitles up for Enzo's little spiel that he gives to Dot.
Oh geez.
So he's like, "Oh great, just huge. Seriously active. I was written for this format. I'm going multi, quality, major even. I'm crunching along at high volume and proud of it. Call me whenever." And then Dot cuts him off there. And Bob's just like, "Yeah, we're glad to hear it."
Yeah, his stonks are through the roof.
His stonks are through the roof. So Bob and Dot leave to go mend a tear that was apparently left over from the last game, which, okay, so this is new. Like, do games are what create tears then?
Yeah, it is almost like
last week
games create instabilities here or there, and maybe, yeah, is it implying that all the tears come, or most of the tears, or at least minor ones, come from games?
Maybe. Because, I mean, last week, all we learned about tears was that game cubes can stabilize them.
Yes.
But now Dot's saying that the last game that came into mainframe left a bunch of tears around.
Oh,
So
she says more than one.
Yeah, they're on a throughout this episode, they're kind of on a little mini quest of their own, going around mainframe mending tears that were left over from the previous game.
Yeah, my favorite is they're like, "Oh, that's great, Enzo. Bob and I are going into the basement to mend some tears." And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like,
I didn't even think of that.
yeah, like when your older like sister who looks after you like gets a boyfriend, but they pretend they're just friends.
Yeah. And like, or like the babysitter, like whatever, teenage girl your parents, I'm speaking hypothetically because this never
Oh,
happened for me,
hypothetically, of course.
but I've seen it in movies, like where like kids' parents will hire some like neighborhood teenage girl to babysit their child, and
Bring her boyfriend over.
she'll like send the kid to bed, and she'll bring some guy over to quote unquote study.
Yeah, and then they try to get the kid to go to sleep at like 6 p.m.
Yeah,
They can like make out and watch movies.
they can make out and watch like Beverly Hills 90210.
Wow. Dawson's Creek.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that wasn't out yet, or was it? I don't know.
94, maybe. I think.
Who knows?
I don't know. No,
Who
Beverly
knows?
Hills 90210 was just the first thing that popped into my head.
Uh-huh. But yeah, they're like, "We'll be downstairs if you need us," and I'm like, "Uh-huh." And much to my surprise, um, they are actually going to mend a tear.
Yep. And so Enzo is like, yeah, things will be great if I actually got some customers. And then he's asleep, gets a phone call on one of the vid windows in front of him, And look who it is. It's Megabyte. And he has hack and slash on either side of him.
Yep, his two most trustworthy lieutenants.
Yeah, which I know Aiden told us last week which one was which. I don't remember. So yeah, Enzo gets a call from Megabyte hack and slash, and Enzo refers to him as Mega Breath.
And then he immediately corrects himself for some reason.
Yeah, I mean Megabyte. And yeah. Megabyte is like, oh, I understand you have a new delivery service. And Enzo is like, oh, it's not that new unless you count 31 nanoseconds as new.
Ooh, here we go. Okay. For anybody that knows that we have another podcast, they use cycles and megacycles and nanocycles. Maybe it's just nanocycles in this one. And it's a...
I think he said nanoseconds.
Oh, okay. Then he is forgiven.
But
I was
still,
like, ooh, the cycles return.
But still, this is still like nebulous passage of time bullshit. That it's
well,
like,
if he says, well, it's not exactly new. It's 30 nanoseconds new, 31 nanoseconds new. Nanoseconds are a real thing, so that confirms our suspicions. Yeah, that confirms our suspicions. In the first episode, where we were like, wait a second, like, does time move differently here? And that absolutely confirms that time moves like way differently.
Totally. I just wonder, like, I guess what I'm wondering is, like, what is 31 nanosecond? Like, how long does that feel from their perspective?
Oh, from their perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just conjecture at that point.
That's what I'm kind of wondering.
Minutes?
This question and more will not be answered next week on Alphanumeric.
Yeah, so it's not exactly new. And he starts just going on a little tirade about, you know, how he just starts talking about like gibberish, and Megabyte kind of just like looks annoyed but allows him to just go on, and then he interrupts him and he's like, what a persuasive sales sprite you are. You've convinced me to use your services.
And so, long story short, Megabyte wants to hire Enzo to deliver a package to Hexadecimal, which is a character we have not met yet.
Yeah, like they keep alluding to Hexadecimal, but they've never shown her yet. Yeah. Interesting, in the vid window when he was talking, Megabyte was talking to Enzo. Again, he's got no legs and he's in his like hover throne.
Yeah, his hover throne connected by a ball joint.
Yeah, I mean, why would you walk around with like giant muscular like robot legs when you could just like hover around?
Do you mean robot legs or do you mean naked man legs?
I mean naked bestial man legs. Thank you for correcting me.
What I find funny is like when the after Megabyte hires Enzo and Enzo agrees to take the job.
He uses reverse psychology to get him to take the job.
And after Megabyte signs off, Enzo is just like, thanks, Mr. Byte. Mr. Byte.
Mr. Byte. I'm sure he loves being called that.
We're in the basement now, and Bob and Doc totally not making out.
They're not making out.
They're not making out at all.
Well, did we forget to mention that he passes a package through to Enzo, or does that not happen?
Oh, yet? No. Yeah, we did forget to mention that. So
this is cool.
Either hack or weird. Slash, whichever one. We will never know which one is which.
We'll never know.
He grabs this like little gift box. It's like all wrapped up like a present.
It's quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
This is weird.
this
there's a
little tiny
trans-dimensional window.
Yeah, that opens up, and hack slash wow, that sounded weird.
Hack or slash.
Yes, hack and or slash extended his arm holding the package through this trans-dimensional vid window and was able to pass this parcel to Enzo in Dot's Diner, which this is some interesting tech.
So that means that they are able to, they're able to open windows and transfer physical objects across mainframe through these little portal windows. And that raises so many questions for me. Questions that will undoubtedly get answered. Like, can a being go through one of these windows? Does that mean you can
If a being can go through one of these windows, why do people have zip boards?
Is it really high energy usage? Is it only if somebody on the other end accept the transfer of files? Maybe it's only because Enzo accepts the file transfer.
Maybe. Which makes me wonder. It's like, okay, so if he just rejects the file transfer, what happens then? The window closes, and then hack and or slash's arm is just immediately severed.
That's what I was thinking. Like some Stargate shit. Like you
exactly.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, okay.
It's easier to just go with that than fathom the possibilities of a question that will never be answered. So yeah, he accepts the present. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was going to say. Also, I feel like hack and or slash is just going to become a thing now.
Well, it's impossible to tell the difference.
Right?
It is how it is.
It is who it is.
It is when it is.
It is why it is. Not it is why it is, mind you. It is why it is.
Oh, Wyatt.
Yeah,
Wyatt. The windows all close, and Megabyte laughs maniacally. And the camera zooms up into like the rafters in Megabyte's base, and there's like a little ball creature like looking at him, and he's got like a little part of his head that's like flashing green and red. Mm-hmm. He's got a little antenna on him, or it's his tail, not an antenna. So we've never seen this weird creature. Presumably he's spying.
Yeah, that's the likely takeaway there.
Yeah. So then we cut to Bob and Dot making out in the basement, mending tears, and
air quotes.
And I like how you could tell that I used air quotes even over voice. And surprise, surprise, they actually are mending tears. And it jumps into a storage packet. These are actually really cool, like cardboard little boxes Dot has in her basement. They're essentially dodecahedrons, like 12-sided dice. And
okay,
I don't know why I know that. Blame Dungeons and Dragons or some nerdy shit. Anyways, she has these dodecahedrons hanging out in her basement, and presumably they're
that is such an awkward sounding word.
Yes,
to me.
that's I've been told that most of my life, no matter what I say.
Like I haven't even I have never said that word at any point in my entire life.
You know it exists.
I can assure you. But even just listening to it, I'm like, I just know that is an awkward word to say.
A lot of things in math or geometry are kind of awkward. But yeah, anyways, yeah, dodecahedron.
Especially mathematicians.
I'm going to say dodecahedron too many times, and it's going to lose all meaning. So yeah, there's a tear. There's a tear in one of them, in one of the D12s. And Bob uses some weird sensor on his glitch. It's got like little like antennas that are pointing, and he's like, there it is. And he tells Dot to like shield her eyes, and the whole screen turns white, and they're both covering their eyes. And then when the screen kind of fades back into color, there's another tear, like the one we had seen in episode 1, but it's tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the size of a medicine ball AKA the thing that broke fingers in elementary school and was never used properly.
Yeah, Bob and Dot close the tear. Yeah, Enzo shows up and is all like, yeah, I got my first delivery. Cool. I got to take a package to hexadecimal. And then Enzo fucks off, and Bob and Dot both look at each other and they're like, great. And then they're like, wait, hexadecimal in unison.
Yeah, they stare at each other and they're like, hexadecimal, but it's like too late because Enzo's like zip boarding out of the diner.
Yeah. But Dot is able to grab him in time, and she's all like, did you say hexadecimal? Who sent the package?
Oh, by the way, his shoes look rad. Like he's got these massive red like skater shoes, and I'm like, man, where do I get those kicks? Like I would you've seen the shoes I wear and the style of clothes I tend to go with sometimes, and like I like straight up would just wear those shoes non-ironically. They're pretty rad. They must exist somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure. Or if not, I'm sure you could probably find like an Etsy store or something where someone would make that.
Find a blank, like a white model and like paint it or modify some already existing pair. Yeah. So they look at him and they stop him, like you said, and Bob and Dot are kind of suspicious, and he's like, "Oh, I see how it is. You're jealous of my success."
Yeah.
And he kind of acts like a whiny brat.
He does. And they're like, who would hire you to send a package to hexadecimal? And Enzo is like, oh, it was Jean-Luc. Yeah, that's right, Jean-Luc. Why would anyone send a package to hexadecimal? What's in it? A bomb? And in a bit that made me laugh earlier, Enzo was like, I don't know. It's a surprise. And then Bob and Dot look at each other, and in unison, they're like, a bomb.
A bomb. Yeah. And it's funny because that's immediately what the viewer thinks, right? Yeah, well, basically it is. It is a fucking bomb. And they end up compromising and being like, this is what's gonna, because he goes through, wow, like he's a little manic at times and then like depressive other times. And I think that's just child manipulation. Like as somebody who grew up with like a bunch of cousins and siblings, the whole like being super stoked about something and then acting like super sad is such like a child manipulation tactic. And that's what he does here. Anyways, my business is doomed. End of file. Log off. Game over. I'll give up. I'll never be as cool or as successful or as tall as Dot. And she kind of leans down and she's like, oh, compile up. Act your age. And kind of like literally makes him chin up, puts her hand on his chin and straightens his hat. And she's like, there's a simple solution to every problem. And she grabs the package and shoves it into Bob's chest. Bob, you deliver the package. And Enzo, you continue your business and quit being depressed. Or sorry, no, she actually says, don't quit file so easily. I gotta point out their little computer terminology. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then she walks away and says, make it snappy. We've got more fixes left in here. And Bob is like, wow. And he says, how does she do that? And Enzo's like, what? Get everyone else to do all the work? And he's like, yeah. And Enzo's like, don't ask me. I've been trying to figure that one out forever. And then my favorite scene.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember immediately what it cuts to?
No, I don't.
It immediately cuts from Enzo, and there's a sweeping camera angle as it zooms in on this like red, shadowy, crazy silhouette of hexadecimal. And as the camera zooms in, it passes all of her floating masks. They're white masks with bright red lips, arched black eyebrows, and they have different expressions on them. And they're just floating. They're floating in the air.
Unlike Megabyte in the last episode, this is how you introduce a main antagonist.
Thank you. The silhouette is strong. You can't see her face. She has glowing green eyes as it zooms in, and she's holding up different masks. And her legs are crossed.
And she is the only figure in the shot.
Yes.
Which I mentioned. Isolation shot. Typically in movies and TV, you want to introduce a character for the first time in what is called an isolation shot.
Exactly like this.
Yes, which is where they are the only figure in the frame.
And her throne is like a chair with like insectoid legs, and the inside of her layer is like dark purple, and it has like organic looking like portals, like almost like slides or tunnels leading in. It's a very different look.
Mm-hmm. And the lighting is really good in this scene too. Like it's almost kind of spooky.
Yes.
Like there's not a lot of light, but there's a lot of darkness. But the light that is there is really emphasizing the red on her costume and like the whiteness of her mask. So for the listeners, Hexadecimal is wearing these like Harlequin masks, and her face is seemingly not able to express at all. She always just has
when she
like,
speaks, her mouth doesn't move.
Her face doesn't actually, her facial expression doesn't actually move at all.
Her mouth doesn't move, her eyes don't move. Yeah.
But she'll wave her hand over her face, and then whatever the expression on whatever mask she's wearing will change, like as she's talking. It's a really, really cool visual. And
it's a cool character.
It's especially cool for if you think of the fact that this is 1994. Like this is 1994, the early days of CGI. So like bravo to whoever conceived this.
Yeah, it's and her, like I said, her silhouette is strong because she has a backlight as the camera zooms in, and her head crest, like her head crest. And she's like metallic blood red, by the way. So she's a good contrast to Megabyte. And her head crest has these kind of like prongs that stick out, kind of like giving her a.
Yeah, she has 5 of them.
It
almost gives her like
red.
Yeah, it almost gives her this like almost like crown.
It's like a crown, an aura crown kind of thing. It's very rad. I think she has earrings.
Yeah, she does. She has like big ass
triangular hoops or something.
Yeah, something along
big
those
dangly earrings. Yeah, and her accents are red and gold, and she has, well, again, she's just probably one. It's weird talking about their clothes because technically they're not like clothes. Much like Megabyte, like her pieces are just on her, but she has talons.
Much like Megabyte, who is just a big, hulking, naked blue man who is just owning it, you know?
Well, he is owning it. He loves like standing tall, like with his hips like jutted out, with his like hands like resting on his hips.
Yeah.
Like you gotta own it. But yeah, when she has her legs crossed, she's wearing knee-high leather like heels, which I'm a fan of. And her arms, like forearms upwards, are black too. Like she's almost wearing gloves. But she has like beast talons. Like her hands have like long nails.
Yeah.
And it's
she has really long nails that have this. They kind of remind me of Lady Deathstrike from X-Men.
Okay, yeah. And unlike Megabyte, who can like extend them or whatever, hers aren't like straight fingernails. They're actually like a little curved.
Yeah.
Like actual more like natural claws. And I think she's whoa, wait. Maybe I'm wrong. Have I never noticed? How many fingers do people have in this show? Because I think she has 3 fingers and a thumb, like The Simpsons. But I think it
depends on the character.
Yeah, some have just like Lego hands. Like the Binomes just have little claspy cuffs.
Yeah, and I think sprites like Bob, Dot, and Enzo, I think they all have 5 fingers.
I'm sure that we would have noticed otherwise. So to get back to Hexadecimal, she almost, again, they don't really like have clothes. Unlike Megabyte, who you could argue is a naked robot. Hexadecimal's clothes are kind of built into her form. She almost has like a corset that protrudes from her chest, like metallic. Like I can see why ABC, if they saw this episode, they would be like, oh hell no. Like you literally have a dominatrix on the show.
Yeah, I feel like whatever artist designed Hexadecimal was like probably
doing it with one hand.
I was gonna say he was probably looking at some like underground like fetish, like late 80s, early 90s, like underground fetish magazines.
Pre-Matrix, like underground clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watching this now after decades, I feel like there's definitely some influence on my young psyche about what kind of stuff I ended up liking. And
Yeah.
there's no way anyone listening to this would not suggest the same.
Yeah, between this and like Catwoman in Batman Returns.
Yeah, I feel like Tim Burton and ReBoot have influenced some young minds.
They inadvertently scarred us for life in a way.
Oh no, I'm quite thankful. And oh geez, I just noticed she's got like a little like metallic cape thing. Here, my partner's here. Tell me that hexadecimal is not a dominatrix. Yes, she obviously is. Thank you. She just walked in and like glanced at the screen with me paused with her like long ass legs, wearing heels, like she's crossing her legs, and I'm like, tell me she's not a dominatrix, and she's like, she obviously is, and
and her weird like kind of spider throne thing that she sits on.
it's creepy, but I like it. You know, Black Arachne and hexadecimal are probably why I like spiders. Yeah, let's go with spiders. Curvy, long-legged, likes to kick men in the face, spiders.
I mean, I did also bring up the influence that Catwoman had on us during our formative years. And on our other podcast, Too Much Energon, where we talk about every episode of Beast Wars ever in production order. One thing I liked about this scene is so she's sitting on her spider throne thing, and that little creature that we saw earlier spying.
The dog ball.
Yeah, the dog ball.
Scuzzy.
Scuzzy, yes. That we saw spying on Megabyte and Hack and or Slash. Shows up, and she's basically all like, "Oh, why are you interrupting me?" And so she creates a hole in the floor, and he drops into.
Yeah, speaking of highs and lows and emotions, hexadecimal. Wow, does she have some highs and lows very quickly? She says, "How dare you interrupt me when I'm putting on my face?" And a hole like appears.
And Scuzzy drops through it piece by piece. And then she says to herself, "I don't know why I did that. I was quite happy to see him." So she brings him back.
Yeah, she has like a really sad face.
I really dig that. As someone who has BPD and who has known and been involved with many bipolar individuals, there's
the moment of clarity after you react a certain way.
Yeah, I dig it. For a dumb 90s kids show like that, it was a surprisingly sincere depiction of someone who was unstable.
Yeah. And she gets angry at him. She opens up a hole in the floor. He falls. By the way, like Mainframe is floating on what seems to be like an ocean of a tear. So presumably anybody that falls off of the giant floating islands that make up Mainframe get deleted. And as Scuzzy's presumably. And as Scuzzy's falling, like you said, oh, why did I do that? I was quite happy to see him. She waves her hand and he stops falling. And then he's like summoned back up into her lair. So she has some sort of like, already she's showing that she has some sort of psychic control over the morphology of her lair and of Scuzzy.
Oh, nice word point.
Sometimes I surprise myself with my goodly vocabulary. Yeah, and I really like that. And then he just hovers over to her and he starts wagging his antenna tail. And she's like, "Oh, what have you got for me?" And he leans forward. His on top of his head, it's like a glass ball, and he shows her like a recording of him spying on Megabyte and the Chuckle Twins, the dynamic duo, Hack and or Slash. And it's audio too, and it zooms in on the present, and the present is like a porcelain mask, like the ones she wears. And you can hear Megabyte talking, and he says, "A delete command. Masked has a mask. She'll never know what erased her."
Which, this mask has a fucking timer on it.
So,
right on the forehead. It has a timer that says 30.
I don't know how intelligent Hexadecimal is or why they're fighting. Presumably, they're very different mob bosses, and they fight for turf. But, like, it looks just like one of her masks. It has a fucking timer on it. Like right on the top, like a green, like, timer. She'll probably notice.
You can't miss it.
And Megabyte says, "Now all I need is some unsuspecting fool to deliver it."
And a vid window opens up that shows a bunch of like spinning shots of the model of Enzo.
Yeah, like one of them almost looks like a 3D wireframe as he's like spinning. And she has like a shocked face, and she like puts her hand above her like mouth, and she's like, "Delete me, will he?" Time to calculate a little surprise. And she ends up like maniacally laughing. And she's like, "I'll delete him and his delivery boy too."
Yeah,
and she has kind of an old, like a gravelly, like older sounding voice. Like she doesn't sound young. Kind of like Megabyte does not sound young.
No, she definitely sounds like an older woman.
So hey, 90s kids, if you watched ReBoot and you're into MILFs, and you're specifically into goth MILFs, there's probably a reason. As Hexadecimal is laughing maniacally, my DVD copy, it actually says maniacal laughter. It zooms in, and we get a shot of her evil tower, and she and her island. She's actually on a separate island off of mainframe. And oh boy, there's a lot to look at here. There are tendrils, 3, that come out of a dome on the top, and they look like ram horns, like windy ram horns. And then there are all these like spikes kind of jutting up that look like wrapping tendrils of black and purple that point into these spikes straight into the sky. And as we see her island, it looks like a chessboard, and the pieces are like metal, like rusty or oxidized, like blue and reddish like colors. Because you know how the Statue of Liberty is kind of bluish is because of the copper oxidization. They kind of look like that. It's very weird.
Yeah, I honestly I didn't know.
Oh, there we go. He's back.
There we go. He's back.
Yeah, her floating like island of lost angles is, which I read in my mind as Los Angeles like 3 times before I realized it was Lost Angles.
I'm sure like the name is probably meant to evoke Los Angeles.
And the kind of like I assume people live here. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's just full of nulls. But it's almost like a chessboard, and these kind of like skyscrapers or like little high-rise apartment buildings or whatever are kind of like rusty, like iron and rusty copper, like blue and red pieces, which I find interesting.
Yeah, and
it's basically very, very kooky and weird.
Yeah, and a lot of the buildings are falling apart. It looks like there have been numerous disasters that have gone on in this little island at some point over the years.
Yeah, it looks like people used to live here like 50 years ago. And then there was a fire or something, and yeah.
Perhaps it was an area that just like kept getting bombarded with GameCubes. There are a lot of nulls there, so
yeah, there are a whole bunch of nulls, which means maybe this area was like ravaged by games at some point.
Yeah.
And just there was no repairs, and they like any normal binomes left just moved, or maybe hexadecimal moved in at some point, and it became a funhouse kind of place. Because when Bob goes to Lost Angles,
so Bob zips in on
it's
his
weird.
board.
The bridge going to Lost Angles has like a loop-de-loop.
It kind of looks like a thrashed version of like the Golden Gate Bridge, or like the like it just looks like a suspension bridge that you would see in any major U.S. city.
Yeah, and as he's going, specifically though, like the Golden Gate Bridge, it evokes Golden Gate Bridge imagery.
Yeah,
and as he's like kind of in this weird funhouse place, as he's going like over an archway, like a stone archway, he kind of like fizzles out and teleports back as if he entered an invisible portal, and he's upside down. And he kind of regains his footing on the zip board. And during this, there's a little homage to Super Mario Bros. There's one of those. Yeah, there's one of those tubes, like the green tubes, at like 9 minutes and 8 seconds or so. But it's black, and it's in the background. I only noticed it because I just happened to pause there, and I was like, oh, cool. And yeah, he kind of stops and talks to himself, and he's like, why do I always get lost in Lost Angles?
Imagine that, right?
Yeah, so Enzo follows him though.
Yeah, and Bob is zipping through Lost Angles, and on a zip board, he has the parcel. He's holding it behind his back in a way that, much like earlier, with Dot, like he also kind of looks like he's handcuffed as well.
Very odd posture.
Yeah, it's strange.
I'm not a surfer or anything, and I'm not very good at skateboarding, but I longboard, and that's usually not a good stance if you want to keep your balance on something.
I would
like
imagine
both arms behind your back. No. And he turns around, and he's like being followed by all these very colorful, very fast slugs.
Yep, he has a total legion, if you will, of nulls in pursuit of him.
Yeah, and he says there's nothing worse than having to ask a null for directions. So
I'm actually surprised at how fast these nulls are moving, because you would think they would be a lot slower.
Yes, they're moving very fast. And I think this is the first time we're really shown them.
I think
mentioned,
so, yeah.
It's mentioned in the previous episode that sprites or binomes that are in a game and the user wins, they're nullified, and like the whole sector becomes nullified. We still don't really know what that means, though.
Yeah, we weren't really shown what that entails exactly. All we saw was in the last episode was just that a sector was basically just completely
deleted.
Just completely deleted and turned into this like basically Fallout site, essentially.
Yeah, they use the term nullified. Interesting world building. You can definitely tell they built the world for this to some extent before they didn't dive in blind and turn it and make stuff up episode to episode. I mean, they do a little bit, right? But it's not telling us what the nulls are or why when the user wins it nullifies or deletes the sector. So I find that intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it shows all these like rainbow colorful like slugs. Wow, they are moving.
And a giant explodey bomb drops.
Like an Acme Roadrunner bomb, like a big round like pirate cannonball with like a wick in it. It's huge. Fills the entire like street.
It looks like the bomb that Adam West ran around the docks holding over his head in the 1966 Batman movie.
It is literally a giant like cartoon bomb.
Yeah.
And he screeches to a halt, and he turns and kind of looks at all the nulls because he stops right on the bomb, and he says, "Get out of here! Find someone else's energy to eat." As they kind of like test the waters, and they go up to him and then retreat a little bit, and like very pack animal mentality. So it implies that they're somewhat dangerous.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Lost Angle's asshole opens up.
The ground just opens up, yeah.
Yeah. And then Bob just drops through it and goes through this like tunnel that takes him
Purple
in.
intestine? It's very weird looking.
Yeah, and that's why I called it Lost Angle's asshole opening up. And it drops Bob right into Hexadecimal's lair.
Yeah, he goes down one of those slides and it shoots him right up, and because he's Bob, he lands on his feet. But he's on this big gray platform, and one of Hexadecimal's masks is like floating.
Just floats into frame.
She's scarier than Megabyte in different ways.
Yeah, her mask just floats into frame, and she's talking to Bob at this point. And then we see a lightning strike, and her body materializes. And then we get another isolation shot of her walking toward Bob, full frontal, like walking toward Bob with her hips swaying.
Yeah, this is the shot that, wow.
She is very sexualized here, but also like the way she's
introduced. Catwalk.
The way she's introduced in this scene, like it's surprisingly scary for a kids show.
Yes, because of the floating mask and the disembodied voice, and
yeah, like you could easily redo something like that in a Blumhouse horror film to great effect. Just a mask floating into frame with a disembodied voice talking, and then all of a sudden like
she manifests.
A body materializing connected to the mask. Like it's scary.
Yeah, and then a broad-shouldered, like thin waist, wide hips, like thick thighs, like Hexadecimal comes into view, and she starts walking down these steps towards him, and she just has like a neutral smile on the mask she's wearing, and it's like a catwalk. She walks like one leg over the other in these heels with these exaggerated hip movements. And I know I mentioned it before, but I don't think ABC would have liked this. But
I'm sure they didn't.
But 8-year-old, about 10-year-old Cal, let me tell you, he did. Like even before like puberty hits in, like you know what you like. You don't know why you like it, but you like it. And she's like, "Oh my, like it seems that you're the delivery boy."
Yeah, and so she grabs the present from Bob and like breaks it open. Just like
splashes it.
Yeah, just like explodes it open. And she's like, "What's this? A mask? I already have one. You keep it."
Yeah, before she like deletes the outside of the box with her claws, she like embraces Bob's head and then rests her hands on his shoulders. And I'm like, "Oh, interesting. I dig it." But yeah, she grabs the mask like you said. She's like, "Oh, what a shame. I already have one." And
which I found funny.
And it's interesting, objects that pass in front, she doesn't just change her expression with a wave of the hand. If something passes in front of the camera, her expression can change. It's really trippy and cool.
Yeah.
And she says, "You'll have to return it to Megabyte with my regrets."
And she shoves it onto Bob's face. It seemingly gets stuck on his face. And then
yeah, that's creepy.
Yeah, it was surprisingly creepy looking to see this like mask like just stuck to his face.
Yeah,
especially because like you can see like Bob's eyes through it.
Yeah,
Just like a look of panic in his eyes.
This look of panic as he has this porcelain mask stuck on his face, and then the camera gives us a ground up view, and there's like a golden clock floating up in the air behind Hexadecimal, and she, like a wizard, like a sorceress, she like raises her arm and like makes Bob levitate into the air.
I thought the gold thing was a lantern.
Oh, is it a lantern? Well,
It
yeah,
looks
it's shining
like
light on him.
Yeah,
You're
it
right.
looks
You're
like a
right.
lantern to me.
It's shining light on him, and she like force pushes him back out one of like these tubes, and he's
Yeah.
ejected out of the concrete ground again. Now this is the thing, he's not just ejected, he goes flying across mainframe, like he's actually like magically levitating, being thrown across mainframe.
Right, so Lost Angles has shat him out.
Yeah, and Enzo just happens to be there, and he's like, oh, that must be Hexadecimal's hole in the ground. And I'm like, are you familiar with this?
Yeah,
He does something kind of clever. He jams his zip board to block the hole from closing.
Yeah, the hole is about to close, so he jams his zip board in there to keep it open. He like kneels down to listen to what Hexadecimal is saying, and she's basically just like, oh, Bob should get to Megabyte's tower, the Silicon Tour, as we learned last episode.
Around when the time bomb goes off. Yeah.
Around the time that the bomb is about to go off.
Yep. And she unsummons Scuzzy again. I don't know. She has her moods, and he disappears down a hole. And as she sits on her throne again, because evil villains need to do monologues, she says, how diabolical of him, referring to Megabyte, to hide a delete command in a harmless mask.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a timer on it. Like, was it harmless? And she's like, I wish I thought of that.
And then we see we're back at Dot's diner, and Dot looks up and notices Bob just sailing in the air, with this
just
mask
flying through the air, struggling to rip this mask off his face. It is so strange to look at.
It is like something looks wrong about it. Like it doesn't look like he's even being launched.
Yeah, he's not launching. He's being magically propelled because he's not falling and he's not moving very fast. It's eerie.
Yeah, it's really, really weird looking. It's some uncanny valley shit.
Yeah, because presumably Hexadecimal is using a psychic like force to like make him fly through the air to go to Megabytes.
Yeah.
And she's like, huh, that kind of looks like Bob. And I'm like, yeah, you think? Kind of looks like Bob, but the face isn't right. And he's screaming muffled screams as he's flying over Dot's diner. And apparently the fastest boy in the world, Enzo, he shows up, and the show has done this a few times now. It cuts to a low point of view
of him charging toward the person.
Of him charging toward
tackle.
Yeah. And she's like, no, stop. So clearly it's not just a Bob thing. So he tackles his sister Dot and starts doing his thing where he just starts talking at 1,000 words per minute.
Yeah.
And she hushes him, like puts a finger to his mouth she's done this a few times to him.
And she's all like, whoa, you're telling me that package was from Megabyte and that it was a bomb? We got to do something, basically.
And he's just nodding in silence. Yeah, one of the things she says, and Bob has no idea. And he shakes his head. I'm like, how do all of these people not know this is a bomb?
Especially characters who speculated earlier that it was a bomb.
And that's what I wanted to bring up. A little bit of inconsistency already. Because remember, they both looked at each other earlier after they found out it was going to Hexadecimal. And they said, it's a bomb. Yeah. But all of a sudden now they need to warn him that it's a bomb.
Yeah, and now Bob has managed to get the mask off of his face.
Still mid-flight.
still mid-flight, still moving awkwardly. Now he looks like he's like hang gliding toward the Silicon Tor.
Yeah, he says,
Like actually.
yeah, like invisible hang glider.
Yeah.
And he says, glitch, rotor or something
Rotor,
like that. Yeah. And a little helicopter spinny thing comes up, and then he stops his trajectory.
Yeah, so he Inspector Gadgets it.
Go gadget copter.
Yeah, basically.
And yeah, he stops his trajectory towards Megabyte's lair, and then it cuts to Enzo and Dot again, and they're on zip boards.
And then, oh shit.
Oh no.
Warning, incoming game. Sky goes purple, alarm goes off.
There's like
Sky opens up,
lightning. Yeah.
and a purple GameCube emerges and is touching down like right by where, conveniently for Bob, like right near where he just happened to be.
Yeah, it descends from the sky, and as it's doing that, it shows binomes, ones and zeros, like fleeing for their lives, like in terror. And like there are a lot of hover cars in the air, like flying cars and stuff, and they all just go nuts and like begin to leave the area. I like that it showed that. It's showing that this is a scary thing, and the average citizen like wants to get the heck out of the way.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, would you want to be in a game?
If I'm Bob or a sprite, yes. If
If you're Bob,
orb,
if you're Bob, Dot, or Enzo, yes, absolutely. If you are a random binome, probably not.
if I'm a 2 foot tall little ball with like Lego hands, I don't want to be I don't want to be stuck in this game.
Yeah.
So Bob goes to intercept it.
Yeah, Bob races toward the GameCube. He's able to get into it, or he's able to get underneath it in time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he can join the game. Dot and Enzo try to do the same thing. They unfortunately do not make it in time.
No, they are. Thank you, because I've got some inconsistencies to discuss later. It says curses and, or what do they say? Curses and crashes. We lost.
I was going to bring that up too. Curses and crashes.
And they look disappointed, and it has implied now, at least once, that you cannot enter the game from the sides of the giant square column, the cube column from the sky. You have to be underneath it. And I'm not sure if it happened in the first episode, but it does show us at some point that, you know, cars will crash into the side. You can't do it. Yeah, you need to be underneath it. And they did not get underneath in time. Although she grabs his hand and says, "Come on," and like pulls him down, and they like race the bottom of the cube to get underneath it. So no, sorry, I take what I said back about there being an inconsistency. She does like race, and they just managed to get underneath it.
Also, hold up. Why would Dot want to bring her dipshit little brother into the game?
Thank you. That's what
she's putting him at risk.
That's what I was going to say. Why are you bringing your 10-year-old brother into the game?
Like, I get her wanting to go into the game to like try and save the sector, but like, why would you bring your child sibling along for the ride? Seemingly by horse.
Yeah, she's like, "Come on," and like grabs him. And when they're inside, they're on a green field, and Enzo immediately says, "Dot, you almost got us erased, deleted, offline." And he's kind of upset. So that's what implies that, hey, like it's dangerous to try to squeeze underneath the game. And that's what gives me the impression, also, I've seen the whole show, that you can't touch the outside of the game.
Yeah.
And that's why Enzo's getting upset. And right after he says it, he's like, "You almost got us offline, erased. Can we do it again?"
Yeah, it's kind of like walking the wrong way through an active Stargate.
That's a good analogy.
Because like A
Or being
Stargate.
there when it opens.
Yeah, well, not just that, but like a Stargate is a one-way portal. Like a gate can be dialed on either side, but whatever
Oh.
side is the dialing gate, you can only go forward that way.
Which is why
So
you need your own your home base Stargates codes.
So, like, let's say you have Stargate A and Stargate B. Stargate A dials Stargate B. There's an active gate going
But it's one
at
way.
but it's one way. So the only people who can pass through it are people on the side of Stargate A, which will transport them to whatever planet Stargate B is on. But if that active portal is still going and people on the other side try to step into it, they'll be vaporized.
They're just gone.
Yeah.
And that's what happens on the outside of the cube.
Yeah, exactly.
But once you're in the cube, you're just stuck in the game.
Yeah.
You can't change your mind. Probably why it's so horrifying for binomes fleeing the scene.
Yeah.
And presumably why Bob is even in mainframe.
Yeah, he's the antivirus the trialware antivirus program, as we established.
So there's a really corny announcer who's like, ha ha ha, good to see you too, Gary. Good to see you too. Certainly is a balmy 65 degrees in here. So it's an announcement of some sort. And they're like, all right, let's get to the race.
So the game that we are playing this week is basically Sega F1 Championship.
Yeah. But a way cooler version of it, apparently.
Slightly more polygonal, but
Well, I mean, there's vehicle changes mid-race. Mid-race, like that's rad.
mid-racer.
Mid-racer! The scene.
If you recall, last week I had mentioned that when I first discovered ReBoot by reading TV Guide, and the little write-up about ReBoot had a picture of Bob wearing racing car getup. It was from this episode.
You did say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob is standing there, and he has his hand on his hips. He's still holding the porcelain mask. And he says, looks like Formula One. And I love this. I don't know if you're watching it at the moment, but
I'm looking at it.
In early 3D video games when they had to render like a crowd, but just for background like filler, this is exactly what that looks like. It's a whole bunch of people.
It was always just
pixels.
Bitmap images.
Yes, just one solid like image.
Yeah.
Static image. And that's what's behind Bob right now. And it's funny because they're not like green or blue skinned or whatever. Like you can tell they're like humans. Like some are wearing hats, they're wearing t-shirts. They're all very blurry. It's a great JPEG.
But they're still two-dimensional.
Yes. So it's a JPEG supposed to resemble a crowd behind them. And I find that really funny because that's actually what we would see in a game. Yes, even though it's way lower res than the actual the actual characters that we see on ReBoot.
At this time, they specifically would actually use Windows bitmap images. So
amazing
.bmp format images.
Okay, yeah, they did use bitmaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like calling things a JPEG.
And actually, like that, honestly, that really only completely stopped being a thing in video games like this gen.
Oh, definitely.
Like even
you played a lot of wrestling games. There's always been like shitty crowd graphics.
Yeah. Like even going back to like even last gen, like early last gen, like wrestling video games, the crowds would be these like 2D sprites that would just like, they were basically just like GIFs that would just loop.
Yeah, just show one there with their hand up and then down and then up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely not immersion breaking. Oh, weird. Speaking of immersion breaking, the camera cuts from Bob and the bitmapped like static like image of a crowd behind him, and it cuts to some biomes, and they look glad that Bob is actually here, and they are so 3D and reflective and like shiny. It really contrasts the crummy the crummy crowd, flat looking 2D crowd.
Yeah.
And Bob says, Formula One, huh? And he looks at the biomes and he says, good thing we know the formula.
I forgot about that.
And they all kind of like, yeah, and they run off and they get in position on the racetrack and they all reboot. And there's that column of that beam that goes above them when they all reboot. And I always like these sequences when they all kind of like take turns rebooting here or there. And one of the biomes reboots and he's just the flag waver. Imagine like you're the only one in a game and you reboot and you're not even a racer.
You're just
You're
like,
oh
well,
shit.
well,
I hope the user loses somehow.
it's like, well, I'm fucked.
But as Dot shows in this episode, you can kind of like go off the rails and get up to some shenanigans.
Also,
You're not stuck in that role.
Also, when the mainframers reboot, not only does their appearance change, race cars appear
Like
as
around them. Yeah, they got
Around.
helmets and they're just kind of in Formula One racers. And they're all green and yellow. All of them. And they have 0-0 and 0-1 on their cars.
Yeah.
So if the biomes that are round have 0-0, and the biomes that are the tall block ones that look like a 1 have 0-1, which I found cool.
Yeah. And when Bob reboots, his race car has the mask bomb on the front.
Yeah. He gives a thumbs up to some of the other biomes, and Bob is in a yellow Formula One racer with like blue accents, blue stripes. And the user, it always depicts the user as like their vehicle, but like there's no person in it. They're just invisible.
Yeah.
And I think they're in like a white or a silver car, and it has like shark tooth like accents on it.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the side or like the nose of a like P-40 Warhawk, like World War II.
Yeah, that they would paint to look like
Yeah.
sharks and stuff. Yeah, I half expected there to be like a curvy kind of like pinup model on the back, painted on the back of it.
I mean, maybe, but I'm sure ABC wouldn't have liked that very much.
Yeah, that's where they draw the line. It wasn't hexadecimal.
Yeah.
And Bob kind of like, it looks like this is his first racing game because he hears everyone else start their engines, and he looks around confused, looks at his dash, smiles, and presses a green button with a key symbol. And then his vehicle which presumably is the ignition. His vehicle like roars up. And
his like tire, as he's trying to accelerate, his tire, like he goes into instant oversteer. His tires are like spinning around, like the back of the car is like swaying back and forth. Like he clearly doesn't know how to drive.
Yes. So this is funny. Some of them are in groups, the 0s and 1s, right? And as they start their engines, their buckles slither over them, like automatically seatbelting them. But it shows one, a number 1 biome, and his hands are on the steering wheel, and he kicks something beneath him, and there's a 0 biome, the big sphere, who's manually with his hands pressing the gas and brake, and I fucking love that. So they need to team up to reach the pedals.
Team players, you know.
Yeah, like at least some of them can't reach the brake and the gas pedals, and I find that hilarious that he just like kicks the guy underneath him, and he's got a derpy looking face, and he's like, oh, and he starts revving the gas. I don't know, I just thought that was a weird little funny thing, and they all narrow their eyes, and like you said, Bob immediately overgasses it. He doesn't shift properly or something, and he's just spinning out as all the other biomes pass him.
Yeah.
So,
shit. Enzo and Dot reboot. They're
a little late to the party for some reason.
Yeah, they are in white and red race cars, respectively.
Yeah, Dot's in a red and black one, and Enzo's in a white and blue and red one.
Yeah,
pretty cool. I guess if you're a biome, you're just an extra. Enzo goes backwards accidentally and then figures it out pretty quick. Still got a faster start than Bob. But because Bob,
we did speculate on last podcast that like Mainframe is Bob's first posting as a full-fledged Guardian, so like he's a rookie.
And that's what makes the show kind of enjoyable. He's like competent and he's been trained, but he's new.
Yeah, and like the show never explicitly states that, but that's just always the vibe that I've gotten from Bob in the first first season.
Yeah, definitely. He even says like, "Oh, I know I'm the new sprite in town."
Yeah.
And everything. But so he does explicitly say that he's new in town. But you can like just because he's new in town doesn't necessarily mean he's not been around. But based on his voice and how he interacts with people, yeah, it's a good guess. This is his first posting.
Yeah.
This is he sent to a small hard drive to what's the term, to wet his beak, to dip his toes in, to gain some experience.
Wet his whistle.
Wet his whistle. Yeah, sure. I'm not using any of the right terminology. But because Bob is a Guardian, he must have way higher stats, because despite like being way behind everyone else, he just starts passing all the biomes, being like, "Excuse me, pardon me, thank you." Yeah, so sprites must have some base stats that are better than the average biome.
That'd be my guess, yeah.
Yeah, first thing, he's in the lead now, and he comes up to a tight turn, and I can immediately tell, it enters his point of view. I can immediately tell Bob's never played a racing game before, because I'm like, wow, is he coming at that tight turn way too fast? And then, gratifyingly, what happens is he hits the brake, he turns really wide, and a few cars pass him, including the user. So I was like, oh, yeah. And then it shows the user neck and neck with one of the biomes way out in front. And he's playing dirty, and he like sideswipes and pushes against the biome, causing him to wipe out. He causes him to wipe out, and it causes Bob to oversteer and end up stopping, but he doesn't crash. And then a whole bunch of biomes pass in their green cars. They all pass Bob. They all steer around him safely. But again, now he's almost in last. So I'm just like, Bob, you gotta get your shit together.
Damn it, Guardian.
Right?
People are counting on you.
Yeah, and all of them are racing ahead of Bob. And the biome that's in last is like steadily approaching him. And Bob's like, I don't think so. And he goes in reverse and he pulls a 180, and he actually gets back in the race. But I like how he's like, I don't think so. And there's just a helpless like biome who's horrified and terrified that he's for his life, who's like, Bob, I just want to try to win. Imagine being in like a racing game and the Guardian is shitting the bed like this, and you're one of the biomes, and you're like, oh fuck, it's up to us. kind of be scary.
Yeah, I've had situations like that in everyday life where things like that have come up, where it's like, oh, the person who's supposed to be like leading the charge is just like completely failing and has no idea what they're doing. And it's like, so do I keep following this idiot, or do I just do my own thing and hope that works? And if it works, other people follow me.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into specific details, but there have been lots of times growing up when I've been like 11, 12, 13, 14, like around that age, where that's the age range where I started realizing that whole, oh, adults know better, thing that they tell you is bullshit.
Oh, completely.
And I've been in scary situations where I've had to tell like someone I've been in a car with, or like an adult doing something stupid, hey, don't do that. Like, slow down. You're going like 80 in a residential zone. Or like telling like somebody in their 30s when I was like 12, hey, don't add that water to the roast. You're cooking it in a glass pan. it's going to crack. And
Mhm.
time and time again, I've had adults be like, oh, you don't know anything. You're a kid. And then what happens? I've been in a car accident because I was driving with an idiot. What happened to the roast? The glass tray like cracked.
Yeah.
Like lots of little things like that where you start to realize, oh, adults aren't these all-knowing, like omnipotent like beings. A lot of them are fucking idiots.
Yep.
So I kind of I relate to that a lot. When you look behind the curtain and realize that the facade that is adults knowing everything is just bullshit. And that's probably how the biomes feel now. They're like, oh god, has this guy ever played a racing game?
No.
Apparently not.
God damn it.
And it zooms in on Bob's car, and the porcelain mask ticks down from 8 to 7. And then 6. And a biome holds up a sign. Imagine rebooting and being the sign guy. You just hold up what lap they're on, or hold up what place they're in.
Yeah.
And Bob
especially if the user is in the lead, like that guy is just sweating bullets at this point. Like,
yeah, because Bob passes a guy and he's holding up a number, and Bob turns and he's like, 18th place? Yeah, so Bob's in 18th place. He says, that's what nitro's for. And he uses his nitro. Cuts to the user. Apparently the user has a special, like, a special ability, and he makes a ramp appear in the middle of the race.
He's using hacks.
He's do you think so?
Maybe.
Or do you think he has special like power-ups other than the nitro, maybe, and everyone else just by default gets nitro? Yeah,
maybe
so but
yeah. Maybe it's hacks, maybe it's Mario Kart bullshit.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Maybe he's born with it.
Yeah. Dot and Enzo catch up to Bob. Again, Bob, come on. Man. And she says, Bob, your car's a bomb. And he yells back, it's the bomb, I know, it's red. And she hits the ramp.
Slow down and this bus will explode.
If you go under 50, this bus will explode. I need to watch Speed again.
Now that I just referenced it, I think I do too, because I haven't seen it in like at least a decade.
More for me. It's actually been over 20 years.
Oh wow.
And what does Enzo do when he sees his sister fly off in the distance? Cool. And they keep racing. And this is weird. When they hit lap 2, they all turn into hover carts, like some Diddy Kong racing bullshit.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I'm like, oh, cool. They're all hover carts now. And the track gets these yellow kind of like water slide, like luge, like half tunnels around to take the corners differently. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I would have played, like 10-year-old me would have played the heck out of this.
Yeah, so it's not just simply Sega F1 World Championship at this point. No, this is actually quite a dynamic game.
It is. And they're slipping and sliding. And Enzo and Dot, they just cheat. They just go, they cut right across the racetrack. Oh, I guess technically they're trying to talk to Bob, not place in the race. So technically they're still last. They missed a checkpoint or something, but...
Although it makes you wonder, though, like, these characters have agency unto themselves. So, like, in the game, why don't they just cheat?
Also, I wanted to bring this up, and that's a very good segue. Can Bob be like, glitch, auto cannon, and can he just destroy the user with a gun? Do you know what I mean? Can they just cheat?
That would be hilarious. Like, imagine they're playing, like, some kind of... Like, I don't know, imagine they're playing, like, some kind of, like, early 90s version of, like, Red Dead Redemption or something like that. Like, some kind of, like,
a
cowboy...
shooter.
Yeah, some kind of, like, cowboy game, Old West type game. And then all of a sudden, like, Bob is just like, glitch, mini nuke.
glitch, low yield tactical nuclear device.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, like what are the limits of this? Can he be like glitch energy shield and be immune to like bullets for a short time? So I'm very curious why Bob just follows the rules when he has this multi-tool. But to get back to that, no, he needs to win the old-fashioned way, and it shows him neck and neck with the user, and the user's a kind of a bitch, and he sideswipes Bob and gets ahead. And then again, maybe it's hacks, or maybe it's like Mario Kart items. The user drops.
Or maybe it's Maybelline.
Yeah, or I'm thinking Arby's. No, did I do that wrong? So he's in a half pipe, and the user shoots out presumably these hover mines, these explosive things, but like not one, like 30, like just a ton of them. So as Bob comes whipping around the corner in this hover cart, he says minefield, slalom, and he starts like going left and right up this like half pipe and dodging the heck out of these with amazing proficiency, despite the fact it's shown he's barely been able to control a car. Apparently a slip and slide hover car is much easier. Now the biomes follow, and this is interesting. All of them blow up. Like maybe one or two like get through the minefield. No, none of them. And yeah, no, all of them. Yeah, all of them get hit by that and are taken out of the race. And so are Bob and so are Dot and Enzo. So it's just Bob and the user, and then on lap 3, they're literally in jets. Like I said, this is some Diddy Kong Racing stuff. Yeah, they're in jets. There's still a roadway with loop-de-loops. Like they're still hovering like over the ground a bit. They still have to stay on the track, but they're in jets.
Perhaps they are hover jets that still require a ground.
Yeah,
like
maybe it's like a
combination.
combination of the last two vehicles. One that's very fast and one that hovers. And now they're in like really fast like hover jet cars.
Yeah.
And I love this. They're not in a vehicle anymore. Their vehicle's gone. Bob and Dot, sorry, dang it. Enzo, gosh dang it. Enzo and Dot turned full Hank Hill there. Enzo and Dot are like, we need to find a way to warn Bob before he gets deleted. But in my head, I'm just like, well, hold up. Like, if you lose the game, you all get deleted. Like, maybe you guys should sabotage the user?
Yeah, maybe. Just a thought, you know?
Yeah. And then Enzo starts like lamenting about not telling Bob the truth and how this is all his fault. And Dot cheers him up and she's like, I think I have an idea. And do you remember what the idea is?
No, I don't.
It's straight up, it cuts to them driving a fuel tanker, like a Terminator 2, like Mack truck with
Oh, right.
Big rig.
Right,
big rig.
Grabbing a semi truck and driving it right onto the track. So
GTA style, just like fucking right onto the track.
So this kind of answers what we were our question from earlier. Like, this is them straight up cheating. Like, they're breaking the rules of the game.
Yeah, they're pulling a GTA and like leaving the map and returning with a Mack truck, like a big rig fuel tanker. And she detaches the end, and they kind of like pull up, what's it called? Jackknife. They jackknife the big rig, and the fuel tanker like falls and starts tumbling and crosses the finish line towards the user and Bob. And Bob yells glitch. And just as the user,
the tanker topples over onto its side too, in a manner that is very reminiscent of Terminator 2.
Yeah. and
you figure, like, at this point, like, Terminator 2 had only come out like a couple of years earlier, so
that's what I immediately thought of. I expected the liquid Terminator, the T-1000, to be driving it. And
could you imagine?
Oh, in a game? Oh, that would be horrifying.
Just like Robert Patrick shows up.
Robert Patrick in like 1994 3D reboots. He'll probably have like green skin or something, and he's just like intimidatingly walking up to people, being like, "Have you seen this boy?"
Yeah, he just shows up like wearing a cop uniform with sunglasses. He raises his finger and waves it back and forth.
Yeah, that would be pretty scary. Like if he was a virus that caught a ride on a game.
Yeah.
So there's an explosion. Bob's car explodes, the user's car explodes, and technically neither of them crossed the finish line. And they're yelling from the cab of the big rig, "Bob, no!" And there's a big blue and red fiery explosion.
Yeah.
And there's
now something that looks like possibly a tear.
This is weird. Possibly a tear, but then it kind of stabilizes itself and gets shiny.
Yeah,
and the computer.
And then the game is like warning game corruption.
Yeah.
Which is that's a new thing. We haven't heard that before.
That's a new thing, and like, how is that? That doesn't sound good. No. Like that sounds like losing. So maybe this is why Bob doesn't cheat.
It's kind of an interesting concept because it's like they broke the rules of the game, so it is basically caused the game to completely destabilize.
Yeah, it's kind of crashing.
Yeah,
presumably. And Bob, luckily, he's actually safe. He comes down in his go-go gadget copter, and they say, "Wow, you're okay." And he points straight at this tear-like thing, and he goes, "Not good." He says, "Not good."
So Bob has become Scorponok, is what you're saying.
That line just reminds me of Scorponok from Beast Wars.
Not good.
And he says, "This is not good." And it doesn't quite look like a stabilized tear. It's like a blue and purple, like staticky, not quite a tear. And he says Bob says it's an infinite data else if loop, like an or else if loop.
Okay, thank you. I had no idea what the fuck he meant by that.
I'm lucky that I have the DVD subtitles. An infinite data else, like ELSE hyphen IF, an else if loop.
Okay, let me tell you what Crave's closed captioning says.
Oh god, okay.
What it says is data else ELSE hyphen IV.
They gave it the old maximal try.
And just reading that, I'm like, okay,
what?
I don't understand.
I'm glad I got the DVD copy so I can actually see the subtitles. But people have probably heard about this through like media or like watching CSI people like hack or whatever. If there's no like new condition to test and the first condition's false or something, blah 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 blah, it enters like a programming loop where it starts to reset and a program will eventually crash like that. So if a website seems to crash after you're on it for like 10 seconds and you need to reload the page or something like that, there's some sort of error in an end loop in the coding. I know nothing about this, ladies and gentlemen. In layman terms, because let me tell you, I'm looking at Google and it's not helping. But it's a bad thing.
Well, you're explaining it to me fairly well, and
was I? Okay.
Yeah. I have no idea what this thing is that you're talking about, but the way you're explaining it is making sense.
I've been told I can make sense sometimes.
I've been told I can make dollars sometimes.
I've been told I can make it rain sometimes. Yeah, so it creates it creates an unstable loop, and then eventually a web page or a program or whatever will crash. If you've ever played a game and you're in one specific area or a level and it crashes repeatedly and it needs to be patched, that's usually what's going on.
Yeah.
But much like us, Dot turns to Bob and she's like, "What does that mean?" when he says the else if loop. He yells in her face, like leans in and screams, "It means run like you've never run before." And they look horrified and they all have like their mouths go agap. So yeah, not too great at keeping the calm there, Bob. And they all like cartoonically like wind up and like zip away, like and run as fast as they can. And I'm like, "Thanks, Guardian." He does. Glitch can't help. He's just running.
So here's what I'm wondering is like they're within the GameCube, and now the game is collapsing unto itself, basically.
Kind of like a black hole, yeah.
Yeah, where are they gonna run?
That's what I was feeling. I'm
Because like it's not like they can just leave the game by like it's not like the holodeck in Star Trek where they can just go to the edge of it and be like computer exit.
Yeah,
And like a door opens up. So what are like where are they like where are they gonna run to if the game is falling apart? Like to me, that would suggest that they're kind of just fucked.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, uh-oh. Like that's what happens when you like cheat. Imagine like playing Diddy Kong Racing and like a T1000 just like jackknifes a Mack truck in front of you. You'd be like, what the fuck? And then the game just crashes.
Well, and indeed, like when you're playing video games and you hack them so you can do things that the game isn't designed to allow you to do. Like generally,
when you start,
the game kind of like commits suicide eventually.
As someone who has hundreds of mods on Skyrim, I can tell you the game likes to commit. the game likes to just disappear often. And here's the thing: who knows? Who knows which mod it is, or which conjunction of mods it is, or if it just can't handle the number of mods, or if something's has too many polygons and you're looking at it too close. Who knows?
Yeah.
One of many reasons. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the more you mod a game or hack a game, the more fucky it gets. And it shows all the biomes. Interesting, the biomes aren't in their racing gear. They're not in yellow and green. They're all just normal looking now. And they're running too, but they've got stumpy little Lego legs.
Also, I like the shot of
the fire truck.
No, I love the shot of the crowd just completely like breaking apart into this like just shattering into this like vortex with like nothing remaining where it had previously been.
Yeah, just like the green field, the ground.
Yeah.
Shows some biomes. It shows a really low res fire truck. Like it looks really bad. Get sucked up and like split into like a whole bunch of pixels and stuff. It shows a biome like holding on as everything's getting sucked into the white hole. And it looks like he's gonna meet his doom, but Bob kind of like sticks his arm out and saves him. And apparently this one wall there behind is the only thing unaffected by the by the vortex. It even sucks in the sky, and it like melts the JPEG and sucks it in. And
but game, not them for some reason.
They're far enough away. And instead of the game being sucked back into the sky, it kind of deflates.
Yeah, and it completely like collapses into itself like a black hole.
Yeah, it collapses into itself, and it's very staticky. And as it's collapsing, it's losing some of its color. It shows Bob hunching over Enzo and Dot, and the biomes are all there too, and they're fine.
Yeah.
But the little thing, it kind of goes into a ball and then like has a very weak explosion.
So the entirety of the GameCube has basically just imploded onto itself. But for whatever reason, Bob, Dot, Enzo, and all the biomes are like just perfectly fine because they were behind this one wall. So yeah, they're back in mainframe now because the GameCube has cannibalized itself.
Yeah, and I guess they're fine, which means you can cheat in a game.
Which now begs the question, why don't they just do that in every game?
After some Enzo shenanigans, he like tackles Bob again, and they have some light banter. I didn't notice right until now. The next scene, it cuts to Bob and Dot walking by the diner, and the diner has a whole bunch of glass windows all around the outside, right? And Cecil is following them on his track, on the other side of the window, glaring at Bob. And I just noticed that now.
I'm just looking at that now. That's hilarious.
Isn't that great? Like a little detail that they didn't have to put in, and he's just like following them on the track and giving him the stink eye. I guess Cecil's like, I know we kind of speculated about it. But it's fun to think that like Cecil is Dot's like gay best friend. And he's like suspicious and protective of her and suspicious of Bob.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh yeah, Enzo's behind them and a vid window pops up and it's Megabyte.
Yeah.
Giving this 10-year-old shit. He's like, Enzo, you failed me completely. And Enzo's like, why, thank you. And he's like, you're fired. And I'm like, what were you paying him anyway? Were you going to even pay him?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But Megabyte is all like, I found someone else to
deliver my packages.
To deliver my packages for me. And it cuts over to Hack and or Slash holding a comically large bomb.
Torpedo.
Yeah,
it's an Acme torpedo.
Yeah, above them. Like this thing is like 10 times the size of the two of them.
Yes. If Megabyte is presumably 7 feet tall, this thing is 20 feet tall.
Yeah, so they have presumably are just returning this thing because they're like, oh, she said she already has one.
Yeah, she said she already has one. Yeah, she's already got one. Yeah.
It cracked me up quite a bit when I was watching this the other day.
I like how he's like, I found somebody else to deliver my packages. And he turns to the stupidest like characters on the entire show. Although
the biggest
they appear
dipshits in mainframe.
And good help is so hard to find. And apparently they have Herculean strength because they're like lifting this thing each with like one arm.
Yeah.
I said that. I know, I said that. And then it explodes. And the kind of like shaft or whatever that's in like the center of the silicon tour just has a jet of fire that shoots into the
straight
sky.
Up. That's hilarious.
Like a mushroom cloud. Yeah.
And it goes up quick too, like projectile fire.
Yeah, it's projectile fire. But apparently they're not completely dead because like a Three Stooges segment, you just hear it ends with Megabyte just yelling Hack Slash.
Also, after the fire ceases shooting up through the air, the roof of the silicon tour drops back down and lands on top of it like a fucking lid.
Oh, yeah. That's convenient. Yeah, it lands back down.
No harm, no foul, no long-term damage, you know?
It's fine. It's just a giant, it's all carved out of one piece.
Yeah.
And Hack and Slash are like, uh-oh, I think he means us. And then the credits roll.
Yeah, no shit, guys.
Oh, man, he needs to find someone competent. So at this point, like, don't they seem more detrimental than helpful? Like, wouldn't not having Hack and Slash be better than having them work for you?
I mean,
or is that just me?
I mean, if I were a maniacal supervillain, I would generally just do things myself for that reason. Because,
but
like,
what if you were a jacked, naked mob boss?
A jacked, like, manly, muscular, naked-bodied, fully owning it, cobalt blue,
xenomorphic, viral mob boss,
amorphic, viral mob boss. I don't know what I would do, but I would definitely put that naked body on full display at all times.
And he does. When he's not in his hover chair.
Yeah. So that was the second episode, Reboot, Racing the Clock. Cal, do you have any final thoughts about it?
I like hexadecimal.
Yep.
I like them loosely explaining what happens when you cheat in a game. Sort of, kind of. I don't know how I feel about Megabyte being dumb. He seemed so clever in the last episode, and in this one he's like, I'll just send bombs to hexadecimal. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, the mask thing was kind of clever, with the exception of the fact that it literally had a fucking timer on the forehead. But the giant torpedo, like, that's just that was a moment that was clearly just meant for laughs, because like that's just too stupid.
Yeah. That was a little ridiculous, especially the fact that, like, what was that on a timer too?
No, it didn't have a time. Well, it didn't have a visible timer on.
How did it explode? How did it detonate?
We'll never know.
Well, we'll never know. What did you think? What do you think of it? The episode?
Not
great.
I don't know. This episode really didn't do it for me.
So are you saying hexadecimal didn't do it for you?
There were some production choices that were made during this episode that I did enjoy, but overall I wasn't really compelled by anything that was going on. Like I've watched this episode 3 times now, and each time I was having a hard time maintaining
focusing.
Focusing. Like I was having a hard time keeping my attention on the episode.
I think it's because instead of a straightforward plot that introduces us to new mechanics and new characters, it is kind of like an open world tour. Do you know what I mean? It's all over the place. Like Enzo's there, and then Bob is going to Lost Angles, and Hexadecimal is there, and her parts were all good. Like I think the atmosphere, her silhouette, the way she moves and talks was kept. If we had gotten any longer glimpses of her psyche and her monologues, I think it would have been too much. We just got just enough to understand that she's an unstable but powerful villain on the show.
I definitely like Hex, and I like the way that she was introduced, and I like the way I like her characterization thus far. So I look forward to seeing more of her in the coming episodes.
Yeah, and I guess the only other thing I have to say is it's interesting that there are 2 big villains on the show that are opposed to one another. And that's not usually how TV shows work. I love it. These super powerful like viruses inhabiting mainframe, I really like that.
Yeah.
But as far as like the typical structure of a show, that's a little odd. But I think it makes the world better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I just feel like this episode was like the entire plot of this episode was essentially like a one or like maybe a first act joke that was just stretched out too long.
Oh, it's painful that Bob doesn't realize that it's a bomb.
Yeah. Like the whole like, oh, deliver a package to Hexadecimal, and it's a bomb, and
it should have been resolved in the first act.
Yeah, like it should have been sorted out within the first like 8 minutes of the episode
instead of being the entire focus
of
the episode. Yeah, that's fair. It's a little bit weaker of an entire episode plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why it was hard to probably focus. It was all over the place. And that it's kind of showcasing us as much as they can. I guess it's like, oh, by the way, Hexadecimal is a character. Here's where she lives. She has psychic powers. Megabyte's here. Don't forget him. Here are his cronies. Oh, here comes a game. Oh, what happens when you F up a game? Like there's so much introduced that I'm okay with that. But like you said, the plot revolving around this dumb mask feels tiresome.
Very drawn out.
Yeah.
But we are only 2 episodes in. I feel like as this was Mainframe's first series, I feel like they were probably kind of learning on the job.
Oh, I still think it's great, but I understand your woes.
Yeah, that has been the 2nd episode of Alphanumeric. We will be back next week with the 3rd episode of ReBoot, the Quick and the Fed.
Yeah, Quick and the Fed. Huh.
Oh, yeah, Quick and the Fed. Sorry, not the Quick and the Fed. Thank you very much to everyone who has listened to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and if you're strictly on an Android device, you can find us on Podcast Addict. Also, check out our mine and Cal's other podcast, Too Much Energon, where we discuss every episode of Beast Wars ever, another Mainframe Entertainment series.
Yeah, so if you like robots in disguise, that's the show for you.
Yes. Check out our Facebook page for this show, which is facebook.com/alphanumeric podcast. Yeah, that's all I got. We got to get out of here. So until next time, game over.
Game over, man. Game over.
ReBoot will return after these messages.